first thing Jasmine Washington noticed when she woke up was the taste of rust in her mouth. It wasn't blood, not anymore, but the metallic tang lingered, like a ghost haunting her senses. Her body felt foreign, as though it belonged to someone else. Tubes snaked from her arms into machines that beeped with mechanical indifference. The hospital room smelled sterile, too clean, as if trying to erase all traces of what had brought her here. She blinked against the harsh fluorescent light, fragments of memory flickering through her mind like static on an old TV screen. Car, no, not just any car. One of those sleek, self-driving models programmed to recognize its driver's DNA. Hers. She remembered stepping inside, feeling safe behind layers of cybersecurity protocols designed by her own team at Genus Tech. And then chaos. Tires screeching, glass shattering, darkness swallowing her whole. Jasmine tried to sit up, but pain shot through her ribs, pinning her back against the bed. She groaned, clutching at her side. That's when she saw it. A note resting on the bedside table, folded neatly beside a wilted bouquet of flowers. Its edges were crisp, almost surgical in their precision. With trembling fingers, she unfolded it. "Don't trust anyone in Congress." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Anonymous letters weren't uncommon in her line of work. Whistleblowers often reached out to engineers and coders who could decrypt their secrets. But this felt different, personal, as if whoever wrote it knew exactly where she'd be when she read it. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. A nurse entered, clipboard in hand, her smile practiced and distant. "Ms. Washington," she said softly, glancing at the chart. "You're awake. What happened?" Jasmine croaked, her voice raw from disuse. The nurse hesitated, her expression unreadable. "There was an accident. Your vehicle malfunctioned en route to your destination. You were lucky to survive." But something about the way she said it made Jasmine uneasy. Lucky? No one walked away from a crash involving a Genus Tech prototype without scars, physical or otherwise. She glanced down at her hands, half expecting to see burns or abrasions. Instead, they looked eerily unscathed, save for faint red marks where needles had pierced her skin. "Where am I?" Jasmine asked, her gaze darting around the room. "Mercy General," the nurse replied. "We've been monitoring you closely since you arrived last night." Last night. Time had slipped away from her again. Jasmine closed her eyes, willing herself to focus. There was something else nagging at the edges of her consciousness, something she couldn't quite grasp. Then it came rushing back, the man, falling, blood pooling beneath him. "Senator Cole," she whispered, her breath hitching. "I saw." The nurse's pen froze mid-scribble. For a split second, her mask slipped, revealing a flicker of alarm before she composed herself. "I'm sorry, Ms. Washington, but you need rest. Let me fetch the doctor." As the nurse hurried out, Jasmine's heart began to race. Senator Thomas Cole, progressive champion, voice for the voiceless. Dead? No, that couldn't be right. People like him didn't just disappear, not without consequences. Unless someone wanted them gone. Later that evening, alone in her dimly lit room, Jasmine replayed the events over and over in her head. She remembered standing outside the tech conference hall, scrolling through emails while waiting for her ride. Then the car pulling up, smooth and silent, climbing in, setting the destination, and then nothing until waking up here, except there was something. Flashes of movement outside the window, shadows moving too quickly to be real. A face pressed against the glass, eyes wide with panic or maybe recognition. And then the impact, the world spinning out of control. Her smart contact lenses, they recorded everything. If only she could access them. With effort, Jasmine reached for the small device sitting on her bedside table. a portable diagnostic tool provided by the hospital. It connected wirelessly to her implants, allowing doctors to monitor her vitals remotely. But Jasmine had other plans. Using her left hand to block the camera mounted on the wall, she activated the tool's secondary function, data retrieval. Lines of code scrolled across her vision as the lenses synced with the device. At first, the footage was mundane, her commute, snippets of conversations, even a selfie she'd taken earlier that day. But then, just before the crash, something unusual appeared. Encrypted messages embedded directly into the feed. They know you're watching. Run. Find the oak. The talking oak tree. How did whoever sent these messages know about it? Growing up, Jasmine had spent countless afternoons beneath its sprawling branches, writing letters to no one in particular and burying them near its roots. It was her sanctuary, her confessional, a place where she could scream into the void and believe someone might hear her someday. Before she could process what she'd found, the door burst open. Two men in dark suits strode in, their faces obscured by silver masks. Silver masks. The name echoed in her mind, though she couldn't recall why. One of them raised a gun, aiming it squarely at her chest. "Who are you?" Jasmine demanded, backing away despite the pain coursing through her body. No answer, just the click of the safety being released. Adrenaline surged through her veins. Without thinking, she grabbed the diagnostic tool and hurled it at the nearest intruder. It struck him square in the temple, sending him stumbling backward. Seizing the moment, Jasmine lunged toward the window, yanking the emergency release lever. The glass shattered outward, and she tumbled onto the fire escape below. Her legs screamed in protest as she stumbled down the metal stairs, each step jarring her battered frame. Behind her, shouts echoed, growing louder as her pursuers closed in. She didn't stop, couldn't stop, not until she reached the shadows of the alley below, where darkness swallowed her whole. Breathing heavily, Jasmine pressed herself against the cold brick wall, clutching the diagnostic tool like a lifeline. Her mind raced. Who were these people? Why were they after her? And most importantly, what had she seen that put a target on her back? Above her, the city buzzed with life, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath its surface. Somewhere out there, answers waited. But finding them would mean risking everything, including her life. As dawn broke over Silicon Valley, Jasmine limped toward the outskirts of the city, her destination clear in her mind. The talking oak tree. Whatever secrets lay buried beneath its roots, they held the key to unraveling the mystery surrounding her. And maybe, just maybe, they could help her uncover the truth about Senator Cole's death. Because one thing was certain, she wasn't going to let fear silence her. Not now. Not ever. The talking oak tree loomed ahead, its gnarled branches stretching skyward like skeletal fingers. Jasmine approached cautiously, her breath visible in the crisp morning air. She hadn't dared to return here since she was 12, but now it felt like the only place she could breathe freely. The city behind her buzzed with life, yet this patch of earth seemed untouched by time, a relic of resilience amidst a rapidly changing world. As she knelt beside the tree's massive roots, her hands trembled as they brushed away layers of dirt and moss. Memories flooded back. Childhood afternoons spent scribbling letters on scraps of paper, folding them into tiny envelopes, and burying them near the base of the trunk. Back then, she believed someone might read those words someday. Now, she wasn't so sure anyone would care. But today wasn't about childhood dreams. It was about survival. Her fingers struck something solid. An old tin box, rusted but intact. Inside, she found the letter she'd written all those years ago, accusing local authorities of ignoring racially motivated crimes. Reading it now brought tears to her eyes. The crayon smudges were faded, the edges brittle with age, but the anger and hope embedded in every word remained as vivid as ever. You always did have a way with words. Jasmine froze, her head snapping up. Standing a few feet away was a man she didn't recognize, at least not at first glance. He wore a dark coat, his face partially obscured by shadows cast from the tree's canopy. Something about him felt familiar, though she couldn't place why. "Who are you?" she demanded, clutching the tin box tightly. The man stepped closer, revealing features that made her heart skip a beat. His resemblance to Senator Thomas Cole was uncanny. The same sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes, and confident posture. But there was something softer about him, less polished, as if he carried the weight of regret rather than ambition. "My name is Ethan Cole," he said quietly. I was Thomas's brother." Ethan's admission hung between them like a storm cloud, heavy and suffocating. Jasmine stared at him, trying to reconcile the image of the progressive senator with the man standing before her. They were twins, she realized suddenly, recalling news articles mentioning Thomas's estranged sibling, a lawyer who had defended corrupt police officers early in his career. "What do you want?" she asked warily, rising to her feet. Her body ached from last night's escape, but adrenaline kept her upright. "I want to help you," Ethan replied, holding out his hands in a gesture of surrender. "I know what happened to my brother, and I think you're the only person who can prove it wasn't just an accident." Jasmine's grip tightened around the tin box. "Why should I trust you? For all I know, you're one of them." "One of who?" Ethan countered sharply. "The people chasing you? The ones wearing silver masks." She flinched at the mention of their pursuers. Last night's encounter replayed in her mind. The cold glint of metal, the relentless pursuit through the city streets. Whoever they were, they weren't amateurs. "How do you know about them?" she shot back. "Because they've been after me too," Ethan admitted. "Ever since Thomas started digging into something called Project Genesis." The name sent a jolt through Jasmine. Encrypted messages embedded in her smart contact lenses had referenced it briefly, but she hadn't understood its significance until now. "What is Project Genesis?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan hesitated, weighing his next words carefully. "It's classified, or at least it's supposed to be. From what I've pieced together, it's a government experiment designed to create super witnesses. People with enhanced memory recall, heightened sensory perception, maybe even accelerated learning capabilities. My brother believed someone was using it for something far more sinister. And you think I'm part of it?" Jasmine finished for him, her stomach churning. "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "But whoever attacked you clearly thinks you know something important. Enough to kill for." Over the next hour, they talked in hushed tones beneath the oak tree, sharing fragments of information like puzzle pieces waiting to be assembled. Ethan explained how he'd tracked Jasmine down after receiving an anonymous tip-off about her involvement in Thomas's death. In turn, Jasmine recounted her experiences, from the crash to the encrypted messages, and finally, her narrow escape from the silver masks. Their conversation shifted when Ethan mentioned the Green Book movement, drawing parallels between historical efforts to protect marginalized communities and modern grassroots resistance against state violence. Jasmine listened intently, recognizing echoes of her own activism in his words. Despite their differences, they shared a common goal: exposing the truth, no matter the cost. At one point, Ethan pulled out a worn copy of Audre Lorde's The Black Unicorn and read aloud a line that resonated deeply. "I am deliberate and afraid of nothing." Jasmine smiled faintly, appreciating the irony. Deliberate, yes, but fear still lingered in the corners of her mind. By late afternoon, they decided to move. Staying in one place for too long was risky, especially with the silver masks likely regrouping nearby. Ethan suggested heading north toward San Francisco, where he had contacts within activist networks who might offer shelter and resources. Jasmine agreed reluctantly, though her instincts screamed caution. Trusting Ethan went against everything she'd learned growing up in foster care, to rely only on herself. Yet something about his vulnerability disarmed her. Maybe it was the guilt etched into his expression whenever he mentioned his brother. Or maybe it was the fact that he seemed genuinely afraid, not for himself but for others. As they walked, Jasmine noticed subtle signs of surveillance everywhere. Drones hovering silently above rooftops, cameras mounted on lampposts, even pedestrians glancing furtively at their phones. Technology once hailed as revolutionary now felt oppressive, a constant reminder of how easily privacy could be stripped away. "We need to stay off-grid," Ethan murmured, noticing her unease. "Use burner devices. Avoid public transport." Jasmine nodded, pulling out her diagnostic tool. With a few swift keystrokes, she disabled her smart contact lenses entirely, severing their connection to Genesteca's servers. It left her feeling blind, vulnerable without the augmented reality overlays she'd grown accustomed to. But safety outweighed convenience. Nightfall found them hiding in an abandoned warehouse along the waterfront. The air smelled of salt and decay, but it offered temporary refuge. As they settled in, Ethan handed Jasmine a thermos of lukewarm coffee and sat across from her, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion. "I owe you an apology," he said abruptly, breaking the silence, "for defending those cops, for believing the system could fix itself." Jasmine studied him, searching for sincerity in his weary gaze. "People make mistakes," she replied evenly. "What matters is whether they learn from them." Ethan nodded, gratitude flickering across his face. "Thank you for saying that. Most people wouldn't. Most people don't understand what it's like to carry guilt," Jasmine said softly. "To feel like you'll never be enough." They sat in companionable silence for a while, each lost in their thoughts. Then Ethan spoke again, his tone hesitant. "Do you ever wonder if we're meant to fight these battles? Like, maybe some things are beyond fixing?" Jasmine considered the question, tracing patterns on the concrete floor with her fingertips. "Maybe," she admitted, "but giving up means letting them win. And I refuse to let that happen." Her resolve seemed to bolster Ethan's spirits. He smiled faintly, leaning back against the wall. "You remind me of her, you know? Your wife." Jasmine guessed, recalling snippets of news reports about Ethan's personal life. "Yes," he confirmed. "She believed in justice too. Fought for it until—" His voice trailed off, pain tightening his features. "Until she died fighting for civil rights." Jasmine remembered the headline now. A tragic loss that had propelled Ethan into his current crusade for redemption. "She sounds incredible," Jasmine said gently. "She was—" Ethan agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever live up to her legacy." "You already are," Jasmine replied firmly. "By helping me." Hours later, sleep eluded Jasmine as she lay awake on the cold floor, staring at the stars visible through a crack in the roof. Somewhere out there, answers waited. About Project Genesis, about Senator Cole's death, about her own identity, and somewhere closer, danger lurked. The silver masks wouldn't stop until they silenced her, or worse. But for the first time in days, Jasmine didn't feel completely alone. Even if trust was fragile, even if alliances were tenuous, having Ethan by her side gave her strength. Together, they might stand a chance. Tomorrow, they would begin unraveling the threads of conspiracy. Tonight, they rested. Underneath the vast, indifferent sky, Jasmine whispered a silent prayer to the talking oak tree. "Help us find the truth." The city awoke with a groan, its streets humming with the restless energy of commuters and delivery drones. Jasmine and Ethan moved through San Francisco like shadows, their footsteps muted by the cacophony of urban life. They had spent the night in the warehouse, but dawn brought no relief, only the gnawing certainty that time was running out. The silver masks would find them again. It was only a matter of when. Jasmine's mind raced as she replayed fragments of her conversation with Ethan. Project Genesis. Enhanced witnesses. Her own memories. So sharp, so vivid, were they truly hers? Or were they engineered, manufactured like lines of code written into her DNA? The thought made her skin crawl, yet curiosity burned within her. She needed answers, even if uncovering them meant confronting parts of herself she wasn't ready to face. Ethan led them to a safe house tucked away in the Mission District, a crumbling Victorian building hidden behind graffiti-covered walls. Inside, an elderly woman named Rosa greeted them with a wary smile. Her eyes betrayed decades of activism, hardened by battles fought and lost. Ethan introduced her as one of his late wife's closest allies, a trusted confidant who had helped organize protests during the height of the Green Book movement. "We don't have much time," Ethan said urgently after exchanging pleasantries. "They're closing in." Rosa nodded grimly, ushering them into a cluttered living room lined with shelves of old books and faded photographs. On the coffee table lay a stack of documents bound together with frayed string. "I've been gathering intel on Genesis for years," she explained, her voice low but steady. "It started as whispers among whistleblowers, then grew into something bigger, something dangerous." Jasmine sat down, her fingers tracing the edge of the topmost document. It bore the insignia of a long-defunct government agency, its seal partially scratched out as though someone had tried to erase its existence. Beneath it, handwritten notes detailed experiments conducted on unsuspecting subjects. Men, women, even children, all classified under the guise of national security. This is insane," Jasmine murmured, flipping through page after page of horrifying details. Test subjects injected with experimental serums, subjected to psychological conditioning, monitored remotely via embedded devices. Some entries mentioned successes, individuals who exhibited extraordinary cognitive abilities. Others ended abruptly, marked simply as terminated. "They called us monsters," Rosa said bitterly, lighting a cigarette, "but we were just trying to survive. My husband, he disappeared in '87. Never came home. Turns out he was part of a similar program back then. Tuskegee all over again, just dressed up in fancy words." Jasmine felt a chill run down her spine. The parallels between past atrocities and present horrors were undeniable. History repeating itself, cloaked in new technology and false promises of progress. And now, she realized with growing dread, she might be one of those experiments come to life. Later that afternoon, while Ethan reviewed the documents with Rosa, Jasmine retreated to a small alcove near the window. She opened her diagnostic tool once more, accessing the encrypted messages still stored in her smart contact lenses. One phrase kept appearing over and over: "Find the talking oak." What did it mean? Was it merely a reference to her childhood ritual or something more? She recalled the letter she'd buried beneath the tree, the accusations she'd scribbled in crayon as a child. Could there be another message waiting for her there? A clue left behind by someone who knew the truth? "I need to go back," she announced suddenly, turning to Ethan. "To the oak tree. There's something I didn't check before." Ethan frowned, setting down the papers he'd been examining. "It's too risky. If they're tracking you, I can't explain it," Jasmine interrupted, her voice trembling with urgency. "But I feel like the answers are there. Like someone wanted me to remember." After a moment of hesitation, Ethan relented. "Fine, but we move fast, and we stay off-grid." The journey back to the talking oak tree felt surreal, as if they were walking through a dream. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape. When they arrived, the tree stood as majestic and unyielding as ever, its roots twisting deep into the earth like veins pumping life into the soil. Jasmine knelt beside the spot where she dug up the tin box earlier. This time, she searched deeper, her hands clawing at the dirt until they struck something hard. It was another container, this one metal, rusted but intact. Inside, she found a USB drive wrapped in plastic and a folded piece of paper bearing a single sentence. "Your truth is not theirs to control." Her breath caught in her throat. Whoever had left this knew about her connection to Project Genesis and wanted her to reclaim her story. Ethan watched silently as Jasmine inserted the USB drive into her diagnostic tool. Files began uploading immediately, revealing a trove of classified data. Internal memos, lab reports, personnel rosters. Among them was a file labeled Subject J28, accompanied by a photo that stopped Jasmine cold. It was her, at 8 years old, standing beside two men in white coats. She wore a hospital gown, her expression blank, as if drugged or sedated. "What the hell is this?" Ethan whispered, horror etched into his face. "It's me," Jasmine replied numbly. This is what they did to me." For several minutes, neither spoke. The weight of the revelation pressed down on them, suffocating in its enormity. Jasmine scrolled through the files, piecing together fragments of her forgotten past. She had been taken from foster care, enrolled in Project Genesis without consent, experimented on for years before being returned to society with no memory of what had happened. Her enhanced abilities, her perfect recall, her multilingualism weren't natural gifts. They were products of genetic manipulation. "But why you?" Ethan asked finally, breaking the silence. "Why target a child?" Jasmine shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Because they thought they could mold me, make me obedient. Except something went wrong. I remembered too much. That's why they erased everything and sent me away." As they processed the implications of the discovery, a distant sound shattered the quiet, a low hum, growing louder by the second. Drones, dozens of them, descending upon the clearing like mechanical locusts. Their red lights blinked ominously, scanning the area with precision. "They found us," Ethan hissed, grabbing Jasmine's arm. "Run!" They sprinted toward the woods, dodging beams of light cast by the drone's cameras. Behind them, voices shouted orders, boots crunching against leaves. The silver masks had arrived. Jasmine clutched the diagnostic tool tightly, refusing to let go of the evidence she'd uncovered. As they darted between trees, she glanced back at the talking oak tree one last time. Its branches swayed gently in the wind, as if bidding her farewell. "We'll come back," Ethan promised, reading her thoughts. "I swear." Whether or not that promise could be kept remained to be seen. For now, survival was their only priority. Hours later, exhausted and battered, Jasmine and Ethan collapsed in a secluded ravine miles away from the tree. The drones had eventually given up their pursuit, vanishing into the night like ghosts. But the damage was done. Every step forward seemed to unearth more secrets and more danger. "What happens now?" Jasmine asked, her voice hoarse from exertion. Ethan looked at her, his expression resolute despite the exhaustion etched into his features. "Now we fight. Together." And for the first time since waking up in that hospital bed, Jasmine believed him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever truths remained buried, she wouldn't face them alone. The ravine offered little comfort, its damp earth pressing against Jasmine's back as she lay there catching her breath. Her body ached from the relentless sprint through the woods, but it was nothing compared to the weight of what she'd uncovered. The USB drive burned in her pocket like a live coal, its contents too volatile to ignore yet too dangerous to share openly. She could feel Ethan's eyes on her, studying her reaction, waiting for her to speak. "We need to figure out who left that message," Jasmine said finally, breaking the silence. Whoever it is knows about Genesis and about me. Ethan nodded, his expression grim. It has to be someone inside the program. Someone who defected or survived. His voice faltered slightly at the word survived, as if acknowledging the countless others who hadn't. Jasmine sat up, brushing dirt from her hands. If they're willing to help us, we can use that. But how do we find them without leading the silver masks straight to them? That's the tricky part, Ethan admitted. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. We'll have to move carefully, use burner devices, stay off public networks. And we'll need allies. People who won't sell us out when the pressure mounts. By dawn, they had regrouped with Rosa and her network of activists. The elderly woman greeted them with steely determination, already assembling a plan to protect the newly discovered intel. In a cramped basement filled with maps, encrypted laptops, and makeshift surveillance equipment, Jasmine and Ethan began piecing together the puzzle of Project Genesis. One name kept appearing in the files: Dr. Elara Voss. A brilliant geneticist turned rogue scientist, Elara had spearheaded Genesis before disappearing from official records. Her motivations were murky, but fragments of correspondence hinted at personal tragedy. A daughter lost to racially motivated violence. Somewhere along the way, grief had twisted into obsession, driving her to pursue what she called the next evolution of humanity. She doesn't see herself as evil, Ethan observed, scrolling through Elara's notes. She genuinely believes she's saving people, fixing what centuries of oppression broke. But at what cost? Jasmine countered sharply. How many lives destroyed to create one perfect witness? How much suffering justified by some warped vision of progress? Her words hung heavy in the air, underscoring the moral ambiguity of their fight. They weren't just battling a shadowy cabal. They were confronting the seductive allure of utopian ideals gone wrong. As days passed, Jasmine became increasingly haunted by memories triggered by specific sounds and images. A child laughing in a park reminded her of voices from the lab. The smell of antiseptic brought back flashes of sterile rooms and cold metal tables. These episodes grew more intense, leaving her disoriented and vulnerable. Each time, Ethan stayed close, grounding her with quiet reassurance. "You're stronger than this," he told her during one particularly bad episode. "Whatever they did to you, it doesn't define you. You're still Jasmine Washington, the girl who buried truth beneath an oak tree because she refused to stay silent." His words struck a chord, though doubt lingered. Was she truly fighting for justice, or merely reacting to programming embedded in her DNA? The question gnawed at her, eroding her confidence. Their search for answers led them to Alabama, where remnants of the Tuskegee syphilis study still cast long shadows over the community. There, they met with descendants of victims, elders who shared stories of resilience and resistance. One man, a retired pastor named Reverend Hayes, recounted how his grandfather had been part of early genetic experiments disguised as medical care. "They promised cures," Reverend Hayes said bitterly, his voice trembling with age and anger. "Instead, they gave us poison, broke bodies and spirits alike. And when folks started asking questions, they disappeared. Just like your Senator Cole." The parallels between past and present crystallized in Jasmine's mind. History wasn't repeating itself, it was spiraling downward, each cycle more destructive than the last. Determined not to let fear paralyze her, she joined local activists in organizing protests outside government buildings. Together, they chanted slogans inspired by Audre Lorde's poetry, blending art and activism in defiance of systemic oppression. During one such rally, Jasmine found herself standing beside a young woman holding a sign that read, "We are all witnesses." The phrase resonated deeply, sparking a movement that spread across social media within hours. Protesters marched through major cities, demanding accountability and transparency. For the first time, Jasmine felt a glimmer of hope, not because victory seemed inevitable, but because solidarity made isolation bearable. Amidst the chaos, Ethan revealed another layer of his connection to Genesis. While reviewing personnel files, he discovered that his late wife, Leah, had briefly worked as a legal consultant for the project before resigning in protest. Her notes detailed ethical concerns about consent and oversight, warning of potential abuses if power remained unchecked. "I didn't know," Ethan confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "She never told me. I thought she walked away because of the politics, not this." Jasmine placed a hand on his shoulder, offering silent support. Their shared grief bridged the gap between them, forging a bond neither could articulate. Despite their differences, race, background, privilege, they were united by loss and a desire to honor those who had fallen. The chapter culminated in a tense chase scene through Montgomery's automated transit system. Pursued by a rogue faction of the Silver Masks, Jasmine used her technical prowess to disable drones and reroute vehicles remotely. At one point, cornered in a subway tunnel, she sang "Strange Fruit" in Swahili, her voice echoing defiantly against concrete walls. The melody transformed fear into courage, inspiring nearby passengers to shield her and Ethan from their pursuers. When they finally escaped, collapsing onto a deserted platform, Ethan looked at her with newfound admiration. "You're incredible, you know that?" Jasmine shook her head, smiling faintly despite the exhaustion etched into her face. "No, I'm just stubborn." As they boarded a train bound for Washington, D.C., Jasmine glanced out the window at the receding skyline. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, betrayal, and sacrifice. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of quiet resolve. Whatever truths awaited them in the nation's capital, she would face them head-on, with Ethan by her side and the talking oak tree's roots anchoring her spirit. The seeds of revolution had been planted. Now it was time to watch them grow. The train rattled through the night, its rhythmic clatter blending with the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Jasmine sat by the window, her reflection ghostly against the darkness outside. The USB drive rested in her lap, its weight heavier than its size suggested. She hadn't touched it since their escape from Montgomery, though its presence was a constant reminder of the secrets it held and the lives tied to them. Ethan sat across from her, his face illuminated by the glow of a burner laptop. He scrolled through encrypted files, cross-referencing names and dates with meticulous precision. His brow furrowed as he uncovered connections between Project Genesis and high-ranking officials in Congress. "This goes deeper than we thought," he murmured, more to himself than to Jasmine. "Elara didn't act alone. There's an entire network funding this." Jasmine nodded absently, her mind elsewhere. She couldn't shake the image of Elara Voss, her grief-stricken eyes staring out from grainy surveillance photos, her hands stained metaphorically, and perhaps literally, with blood. Was she truly a monster? Or just another casualty of a broken system, driven to extremes by personal tragedy? "Do you think she believes in what she's doing?" Jasmine asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft but laced with tension, as if afraid of the answer. Ethan hesitated before responding. "I think she started out wanting to fix something unfixable, but somewhere along the way, she lost sight of the people she claimed to save. It happens, that line between idealism and tyranny is thinner than we'd like to admit." Jasmine stared at him, seeing shades of herself in his words. Hadn't she questioned her own motives earlier? Wondered whether her fight stemmed from genuine conviction or programmed instinct. The parallels unsettled her, forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths about agency and identity. By morning, they arrived in Washington, D.C., a city steeped in history and hypocrisy. Its marble monuments gleamed under the pale winter sun, symbols of democracy marred by centuries of inequality. Ethan guided them to a safe house tucked away in Georgetown, where allies awaited their arrival. Among them was Marcus Hale, a former NSA analyst turned whistleblower who had spent years documenting government overreach. Marcus greeted them with a firm handshake and a knowing look. "You've stirred up quite the hornet's nest," he said wryly, gesturing for them to sit. "Elara's not going to take kindly to your little crusade." "We're aware of the risks," Ethan replied evenly. "What we need now is leverage. Something that'll expose Genesis once and for all." Marcus nodded, pulling out a stack of documents bound together with rubber bands. "These are transcripts from classified hearings. Names, dates, locations, it's all here, including proof that Senator Cole was planning to blow the whistle on Genesis before he died." Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. So her hunch had been right. Thomas Cole hadn't simply been collateral damage. He'd been targeted because he posed a direct threat to Elara's plans. And now, she realized with growing unease, so was she. That evening, Jasmine retreated to a quiet corner of the safe house, penning letters addressed to no one in particular. Writing had always been her refuge, a way to process emotions too complex for speech. Tonight, however, her words carried a new urgency, as if etching them onto paper might anchor her to reality amidst the storm brewing around her. "To whoever finds this," she began, "know that I am not afraid, not of Elara, not of the silver masks, not even of myself. Whatever lies ahead, I will face it with my head held high, because silence is complicity, and I refuse to be complicit." She folded the letter carefully, tucking it into her pocket alongside the USB drive. Someday, someone might read these words and understand why she fought. Until then, they served as a promise, to herself, to Ethan, to everyone counting on her to expose the truth. While Jasmine grappled with her inner turmoil, Ethan made a decision that would alter the course of their journey. Using a secure connection, he leaked confidential information about his past clients, corrupt cops, politicians, and corporate executives whose crimes he had helped conceal. The exposé went viral within hours, painting him as both hero and pariah. Allies praised his bravery. Enemies vowed revenge. But Ethan didn't care. This was his penance, his attempt to prove that redemption was possible, even for those complicit in systemic injustice. When Jasmine found out, she confronted him angrily. "Why would you do that without telling me? You've just painted a giant target on your back." "And yours," Ethan admitted, meeting her gaze steadily. "But it doesn't matter anymore, does it? We're already running out of time. If exposing my sins helps us gain traction, then so be it." His vulnerability disarmed her, silencing her protests. For all his flaws, Ethan was willing to sacrifice everything, including his reputation, for the greater good. How could she fault him for that? Their preparations culminated in a daring infiltration mission targeting a secure facility housing Genesis archives. Disguised as maintenance workers, Jasmine and Ethan slipped past layers of biometric security using forged credentials provided by Marcus. Inside, rows upon rows of servers hummed softly, storing decades worth of data. As Ethan hacked into the mainframe, Jasmine wandered through aisles marked with cryptic labels. Subject J, 28, Phase Alpha, Termination Logs. Each folder contained fragments of lives destroyed in pursuit of perfection. Some subjects had survived, scattered across the globe like forgotten experiments. Others hadn't. A sudden noise startled her. A faint shuffle followed by the click of heels against tile. Before she could react, a figure emerged from the shadows. "Dr. Elara Voss, you shouldn't be here," Elara said calmly, her tone devoid of malice. She studied Jasmine with an intensity that bordered on reverence. "You're special, you know. a masterpiece born of necessity. Jasmine backed away, her heart pounding. What did you do to me? Elara smiled sadly, as if reminiscing about a lost dream. I gave you a gift, the ability to remember everything, to bear witness when others turn a blind eye. Isn't that what you wanted? To leave a mark on the world? No, Jasmine shot back fiercely. I wanted freedom, choice. You took that away. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Elara sighed, reaching into her coat. Before Jasmine could react, armed guards swarmed the room, surrounding them. Ethan appeared moments later, his expression grim. It's over, Elara declared softly. Come quietly, and no one gets hurt. But Jasmine knew better. Submission wasn't an option, not when the stakes were this high. Summoning every ounce of courage, she lunged toward Elara, snatching a flash drive from her hand. Chaos erupted as alarms blared and gunfire echoed through the facility. In the confusion, Jasmine and Ethan managed to escape, but not without cost. They left behind crucial evidence linking Elara to Senator Cole's assassination. Back at the safe house, adrenaline still coursing through her veins, Jasmine collapsed onto the couch. Her body ached, her mind reeled, but she refused to let despair take hold. They had failed tonight, yes, but failure was temporary. As long as they kept fighting, there was hope. Ethan joined her, his features lined with exhaustion yet resolute. We'll get another chance, he promised. And next time we won't lose. Jasmine nodded, leaning into him ever so slightly. Together, they watched dawn break over the city, its golden light spilling across rooftops and monuments alike. The road ahead remained uncertain, fraught with danger and betrayal. But for now, they allowed themselves a moment of fragile peace, because tomorrow the battle would begin anew. The loss of the evidence from the secure facility gnawed at Jasmine like an open wound. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of the stolen files, names blurred by encryption, logs detailing atrocities committed under the guise of progress. It wasn't just data. It was proof of lives shattered, voices silenced. And now, thanks to her failure, that proof was gone. But the talking oak tree called to her again, a tether binding her to something deeper than guilt or regret. Beneath its sprawling branches lay more than buried letters. It held memories of resilience, whispers of defiance against systems designed to crush hope. She needed to return not just for answers but for solace, to remind herself why she fought in the first place. Ethan understood without her having to explain. We'll go back, he said simply as they packed their few belongings in the safe house. If it means finding closure or another clue, we'll risk it. Risking it meant navigating a city crawling with silver masks and surveillance drones. Washington, D.C., once a symbol of justice and governance, had become a labyrinth of paranoia and betrayal. Yet amid the chaos, pockets of resistance thrived. Activists communicated through encrypted channels, sharing intelligence on enemy movements while organizing protests that drew global attention. The We Are All Witnesses movement continued to grow, its rallying cry echoing across social media platforms and news outlets alike. Jasmine felt a flicker of pride watching videos of people chanting her name alongside Senator Cole's. But pride didn't shield them from danger. As they prepared to leave the safe house, Marcus Hale warned them about increased activity near the oak tree. Elara knows how important it is to you, he said gravely. She'll be expecting you. We don't have a choice, Jasmine replied, her voice steady despite the fear tightening her chest. That tree holds pieces of me I can't afford to lose. The journey back to the talking oak tree tested every ounce of their ingenuity. Using augmented reality contacts programmed to disguise their appearances, they moved through crowded streets like ghosts. Ethan coordinated with allies via burner devices, rerouting traffic patterns and disabling nearby cameras long enough for them to slip past unnoticed. Still, the tension never eased. The sense that unseen eyes tracked their every move clung to them like a second skin. When they finally reached the clearing, dusk painted the sky in hues of amber and violet. The oak stood majestic and unyielding, its roots stretching wide as if embracing the earth beneath. Jasmine approached it slowly, her footsteps muffled by fallen leaves. Her hands trembled as she knelt beside the spot where she dug twice before. "What are we looking for?" Ethan asked quietly, keeping watch over the surrounding woods. "I don't know," Jasmine admitted. "Something, anything." Her fingers brushed against damp soil, searching blindly until they struck something solid. A metal box smaller than the previous ones. Inside, she found a single sheet of paper folded neatly around a small vial filled with clear liquid. On the paper, written in bold black ink, were 3 words: "Preserve your humanity." Jasmine stared at the message, her breath catching in her throat. Humanity. Wasn't that what Elara claimed to protect? What Project Genesis purported to enhance? Yet here, buried beneath the oak's ancient roots, someone reminded her that humanity wasn't something to be engineered. It was something to cherish. The vial puzzled her. Its contents shimmered faintly in the fading light, though she couldn't identify what it was. A biological sample? A chemical compound? Whatever it was, it felt significant, too deliberate to ignore. Before she could examine it further, Ethan grabbed her arm, his expression tense. "We're not alone." Sure enough, shadows moved among the trees, converging on their position. Silver masks emerged one by one, their faces gleaming ominously in the twilight. Among them stood Dr. Elara Voss, her presence commanding even without words. She raised a hand, signaling her followers to halt. "Jasmine," she called out, her voice calm yet laced with authority. "You've come home." "This isn't my home," Jasmine shot back, rising to her feet. She tucked the vial into her pocket, shielding it from view. "This is where I bury lies." Elara tilted her head, studying her with detached curiosity. "Lies? Or truths you're too afraid to accept?" "You don't get to decide what's true for me," Jasmine spat, her anger boiling over. "You took away my choices, my agency. You turned me into some kind of experiment. And look at you now," Elara countered, gesturing toward Jasmine with an almost maternal pride. "Stronger, smarter, capable of bearing witness to horrors others would rather forget. Isn't that worth it?" "No," Jasmine shouted, tears streaming down her face. "It's not worth losing myself." For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the rustling of leaves overhead. Then Elara sighed, her expression softening slightly. "You'll understand someday, when the world sees the necessity of what we've done." Before Jasmine could respond, Ethan stepped forward, positioning himself between her and Elara. "Leave her alone," he demanded, his voice low but firm. "Whatever vendetta you have, take it out on me." Elara regarded him coolly, her gaze calculating. "Ah, Ethan Cole, brother of the man who tried to destroy everything I built. How poetic that you've chosen to align yourself with my greatest creation." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't back down. "She's not your creation. She's her own person. And if you think we'll let you use her, you're wrong." Elara smirked, raising a hand to signal her guards. "We'll see about that." What followed was a blur of motion and adrenaline. Ethan lunged at Elara, buying Jasmine precious seconds to escape. She sprinted toward the woods, clutching the vial tightly. Behind her, shouts erupted as chaos unfolded. Gunshots rang out, startling birds into flight. Jasmine ducked behind trees, zigzagging through the forest until she reached a hidden ravine. Crouching low, she caught her breath and listened for signs of pursuit. Silence greeted her, broken only by the distant hum of drones circling above. She knew Ethan wouldn't give up easily. He'd bought her time, knowing full well the cost might be his life. As night fell, Jasmine climbed higher, seeking higher ground to assess the situation. From her vantage point, she spotted flashes of movement near the oak tree. Guards dragging Ethan away, Elara watching impassively. Fury surged within her, mingling with despair. She couldn't abandon him, not after everything he'd sacrificed. Using her diagnostic tool, she hacked into nearby drone feeds, pinpointing their location. With trembling hands, she sent encrypted messages to Marcus and other allies, calling for reinforcements. Then, steeling herself, she descended back into the fray. The rescue mission was harrowing. Armed with improvised weapons scavenged from the woods, Jasmine infiltrated Elara's compound, a fortified mansion nestled deep within the countryside. Inside, she witnessed horrors that made her stomach churn. Subjects chained to operating tables, scientists conducting experiments with cold efficiency. The air smelled of antiseptic and fear. She found Ethan in a holding cell, battered but alive. Relief flooded her as she unlocked the door and pulled him to his feet. "Let's go," she whispered urgently. But before they could flee, Elara confronted them one last time. Standing at the end of a dimly lit corridor, she delivered a chilling warning. "You can't destroy what you were born to become." Jasmine hesitated, the weight of those words pressing down on her. For all her defiance, doubt lingered. Had Elara truly created her, shaped her into something beyond human control? Then Ethan stepped forward, placing himself squarely between Jasmine and Elara. His voice was quiet but resolute. "Maybe she can't destroy it," he said, "but she can choose how to live with it." With that, he triggered a diversion, an explosion that shook the building, giving Jasmine the opening she needed to drag him to safety. As they fled, fire consumed the compound behind them, erasing decades of secrets in a blaze of destruction. Hours later, exhausted and battered, Jasmine and Ethan collapsed in a secluded cabin provided by Marcus's network. The vial remained clutched in Jasmine's hand, its significance still unclear. But one thing was certain: whatever came next, they would face it together. Because survival wasn't enough, not anymore. Justice demanded action, and Jasmine Washington refused to let anyone else write her story for her. Not Elara, not the silver masks, not even fate itself. The cabin smelled of pine and damp earth, its wooden walls creaking softly as the wind howled outside. Jasmine sat cross-legged on the floor, the vial cradled in her palm like a fragile relic. Its contents shimmered faintly under the flickering light of a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. She had stared at it for hours, trying to decipher its purpose, its meaning. Was it a key to unlocking more secrets about Project Genesis? A weapon Elara intended to use against humanity? Or something else entirely? Ethan paced nearby, his movements restless despite his visible exhaustion. His face was bruised from their escape, his left arm wrapped in makeshift bandages where shrapnel had grazed him during the explosion. He stopped abruptly, turning to Jasmine with an intensity that made her look up. "What does she want with you?" he asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "Elara didn't kidnap me just to send a message. She wants something specific, something only you can give her." Jasmine frowned, her fingers tightening around the vial. "She said I couldn't destroy what I was born to become. Whatever this is." She held up the vial, her voice wavering slightly. "It's part of me, part of what they made me." Ethan knelt beside her, his expression softening. "You're not defined by what they did to you, Jasmine. You've already proven that. But if this holds answers, if it exposes the truth about Genesis, We need to figure out what it is before she gets to us again. They spent the next day analyzing the vial using rudimentary tools scavenged from the cabin and equipment provided by Marcus's network. The liquid inside defied easy identification. It reacted strangely to heat, emitted faint electromagnetic pulses when exposed to certain frequencies, and seemed to shift colors depending on the angle of light. One thing became clear: it wasn't natural. It was engineered, a biological construct designed to interact with human DNA. It's a sample, Ethan concluded after hours of testing. Probably your DNA modified somehow. Maybe it's a failsafe Elara created in case things went wrong. Jasmine recoiled at the thought, nausea rising in her throat. A failsafe? To do what? Control me? Erase me? To ensure compliance, Ethan corrected grimly. If you ever stepped out of line, she could use this to reset you. Make you obedient. The words hit Jasmine like a punch to the gut. Reset. Obedient. Words that reduced her to nothing more than a machine, a tool to be wielded. She clenched her fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. I won't let her win, she said through gritted teeth. Whatever this is, whatever it's supposed to do, I'll find a way to stop it. Their resolve hardened as they regrouped with Marcus and other allies via encrypted video calls. Together, they pieced together a strategy to expose Elara's plans to the world. Activists across the country mobilized, organizing protests outside government buildings and corporate headquarters linked to Project Genesis. Protesters carried banners bearing images of Senator Cole and Jasmine, their faces side by side as symbols of resistance. The We Are All Witnesses movement reached new heights, sparking solidarity rallies in cities worldwide. Meanwhile, Jasmine and Ethan focused on gathering evidence. Using data recovered from previous missions, they identified weaknesses in Elara's operation. Financial records revealed connections between Genesis and multinational corporations profiting from genetic research. Surveillance footage showed high-ranking officials meeting secretly with Elara, implicating them in her schemes. Each discovery fueled their determination, though the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on both of them. One evening, as rain pounded against the cabin windows, Jasmine retreated to a corner with pen and paper. Writing had always been her refuge, but tonight her words carried a different tone. Not just defiance, but hope. To the future, she wrote, know that we fought not because we believed we would win, but because we refused to stay silent. Because justice isn't given, it's claimed. And though the road ahead may be dark, we walk it together, carrying the torches of those who came before us. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and tucked it into a waterproof case alongside the vial. Someday, someone might read these words and understand why she risked everything. Until then, they served as a reminder to herself and to Ethan that their fight mattered. As days passed, Jasmine and Ethan prepared for their final confrontation with Elara. They knew where to find her. A remote research facility hidden deep within the Appalachian Mountains. According to intercepted communications, she planned to release a new strain of genetically modified DNA into the population, an upgrade to Genesis designed to create an entire generation of superhumans. If successful, it would cement her vision of a controlled society, erasing individuality in favor of engineered perfection. We can't let her finish this, Jasmine said firmly as they packed supplies for the mission. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the fear she tried so hard to suppress. If she succeeds, there won't be any going back. Ethan nodded, his expression resolute. Then we end it now. For Leah, for Thomas, for everyone who deserves better than what she's offering. The journey to the facility tested every ounce of their endurance. Harsh weather battered them as they navigated treacherous mountain paths, avoiding patrols of silver masks stationed along the perimeter. By the time they reached the compound, exhaustion etched lines into their faces, but their spirits remained unbroken. Inside, the facility buzzed with activity. Scientists worked tirelessly in labs filled with glowing tanks and humming machines, while armed guards patrolled the corridors. Jasmine and Ethan moved like shadows, disabling cameras and slipping past checkpoints undetected. Their goal was simple yet daunting: infiltrate the central lab, retrieve Elara's research, and broadcast it to the world. But reaching the lab required confronting Elara herself. The climactic showdown took place in a cavernous chamber dominated by a massive containment tank filled with swirling liquid. Inside floated silhouettes of human forms, suspended mid-transformation. Elara stood at a control panel, her hands dancing over keys as she monitored the process. "You're too late," she said without turning around, her voice calm but tinged with triumph. "Genesis evolves. Humanity adapts or perishes." Jasmine stepped forward, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. "Humanity doesn't need evolution forced upon it. We adapt through choice, through struggle. What you're doing, it's not progress. It's oppression." Elara turned slowly, her gaze piercing. "And you think you're qualified to decide what's best for the world? You, a product of my design." "I'm not your design," Jasmine shouted, tears streaming down her face. "I'm my own person, and I choose freedom over control." For a moment, neither woman moved. Then Elara smiled faintly, almost sadly. "Freedom is chaos. Order requires sacrifice." Before Jasmine could respond, Ethan lunged forward, tackling Elara away from the controls. Alarms blared as chaos erupted. Guards flooded the chamber, weapons drawn. Jasmine seized the opportunity to upload Elara's research onto a secure server, broadcasting it live to activists waiting to disseminate the information globally. As the data transferred, Ethan grappled with Elara, shielding Jasmine from harm. In the struggle, a stray shot struck him, sending him collapsing to the ground. Jasmine screamed, rushing to his side. "No!" she cried, cradling his head in her lap. Blood seeped through his shirt, staining her hands red. "I'm sorry," Ethan whispered, his voice weak but filled with conviction. Tell them we're stronger than any code." His eyes fluttered shut as Jasmine clutched him tightly, grief overwhelming her. But even as tears blurred her vision, she forced herself to stand. The upload complete, she activated the facility's self-destruct sequence, ensuring no trace of Elara's experiments survived. As flames consumed the compound, Jasmine staggered outside, carrying Ethan's body towards safety. Behind her, the mountains echoed with the roar of destruction. The battle was won, but the cost weighed heavily on her heart. Yet amidst the pain, a spark of hope remained. The truth was free, and Jasmine Washington, bearing witness to the scars of history and the promise of tomorrow, vowed to carry the torch forward. Because redemption wasn't found in victory, it was forged in the act of fighting for what was right. The aftermath of the Appalachian facility's destruction lingered like smoke in Jasmine's lungs. Acrid, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Ethan was gone, his final words etched into her mind like scripture. "We're stronger than any code." She repeated them silently as she trudged through the charred remains of the compound, searching for anything that might have survived the inferno. His body lay behind her, wrapped in a tarp scavenged from the wreckage, carried with reverent care despite her trembling hands. But there was no time to grieve, not yet. The data broadcast had sent shockwaves across the globe, exposing Project Genesis and implicating countless officials in its atrocities. Governments scrambled to contain the fallout, issuing denials and counter-narratives, while activists rallied around Jasmine's name. Yet even as protests erupted worldwide, the silver masks tightened their grip, hunting down those involved in the leak. Jasmine knew they wouldn't stop until she was silenced, or dead. Marcus Hale and other allies arranged for her extraction, smuggling her back to Washington, D.C. under the cover of darkness. There, she took refuge in an abandoned wing of the U.S. Capitol building, a labyrinth of crumbling halls and forgotten relics, untouched by modern renovations. It was here that Elara Voss lured her for one final confrontation. Jasmine arrived at the designated meeting point alone, her movements cautious but deliberate. Every step echoed against marble floors worn smooth by centuries of foot traffic. Portraits of long-dead politicians stared down at her, their painted eyes indifferent to the chaos brewing within these walls. She clutched the vial tightly in her pocket, its weight a constant reminder of what was at stake. Elara awaited her in the rotunda, standing beneath the massive dome that soared high above. Her silver hair caught the light streaming through stained glass windows, casting fractured rainbows across the floor. Around her stood remnants of the silver masks, their faces gleaming ominously in the dim glow. But Jasmine focused only on Elara, who regarded her with an expression somewhere between pity and pride. "You've come far," Elara said softly, her voice carrying through the vast space. "Further than anyone expected." "Not far enough," Jasmine replied, her tone clipped. "You wanted me here. Now tell me why." Elara smiled faintly, stepping closer. "Because you're the culmination of everything I've worked toward. A living testament to humanity's potential. And yet," she paused, tilting her head as if studying a puzzle piece out of place, "you resist. Why?" "Because your vision of progress is built on lies." Jasmine shot back, her anger simmering just below the surface. "You don't create perfection. You destroy individuality. You strip people of their humanity in the name of saving it." Elara's smile faltered slightly, replaced by something colder, sharper. "Humanity is flawed, weak, fragile. What I offer is strength, clarity, purpose." "No," Jasmine countered fiercely. "What you offer is control. Domination disguised as salvation." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched taut, broken only by the distant hum of ventilation systems. Then Elara sighed, reaching into her coat. In her hand, she held another vial identical to the one Jasmine carried, its contents shimmering faintly, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. "This is the future," Elara declared, holding it aloft. "A new strain of DNA designed to enhance cognitive abilities, eradicate disease, eliminate fear. Imagine a world without suffering, without doubt, where everyone is equal in strength, in intellect, in purpose." Jasmine shook her head, disgust rising in her throat. "That's not equality. That's erasure. You think taking away choice makes us better? Makes us human? It makes you perfect," Elara corrected sharply, her composure slipping. "And once you accept that, you'll see how futile resistance truly is." Before Jasmine could respond, Elara signaled her guards, who advanced menacingly. Trapped in the center of the rotunda, Jasmine braced herself for the inevitable. This was it, the endgame. If she fell here, so be it. But she would not go quietly. What followed was a tense game of cat and mouse, played out amidst the grandeur of American history. Jasmine darted through corridors lined with statues and artifacts, using every ounce of ingenuity to evade capture. At one point, she found herself in a chamber filled with relics from the civil rights movement, a podium used by Martin Luther King Jr., banners bearing slogans of hope and defiance. Standing there, surrounded by symbols of resilience, she felt a surge of determination. Taking a deep breath, she began to sing. The melody of Strange Fruit rose unbidden, haunting and raw, filling the air with sorrow and strength. This time, she sang in English, her voice echoing through the empty halls like a lament for lives lost to hatred and greed. When the song ended, silence reigned. For a brief moment, even Elara seemed affected, her mask of certainty cracking ever so slightly. But then her expression hardened again, and she gestured for her guards to seize Jasmine. The climax unfolded in the Senate chamber, where rows of vacant seats bore witness to decades of debates, compromises, and betrayals. Elara cornered Jasmine near the dais, brandishing a syringe loaded with the glowing liquid from the second vial. "This will complete you," she promised, advancing steadily. "Make you whole." Jasmine backed away, her heart pounding. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the original vial she'd retrieved from the talking oak tree. Its contents reacted violently to Elara's serum, emitting sparks when the two came close. Realization dawned on Jasmine's face. This wasn't just a sample. It was an antidote, a failsafe created by someone who understood Elara's hubris all too well. Without hesitation, she hurled the vial at Elara, shattering it mid-air. The resulting explosion sent both women sprawling, the liquid neutralizing Elara's serum before it could spread further. Guards rushed to subdue Jasmine, but reinforcements arrived unexpectedly. Activists led by Marcus Hale, armed with non-lethal weapons and sheer determination. Chaos erupted as the two sides clashed, giving Jasmine the opening she needed to confront Elara directly. "You can't control me," Jasmine spat, pinning Elara to the ground. "You never could." Elara struggled feebly, her earlier confidence crumbling. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice tinged with desperation. "I did this for her, for my daughter, to protect her from a world that would hurt her because of her skin, her heritage. And instead, you became the monster she feared," Jasmine finished bitterly. "Your grief blinded you, twisted you, and now you've caused more pain than you ever imagined." Defeated, Elara slumped back, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, Jasmine saw not a villain but a broken woman consumed by loss and regret. It didn't excuse her actions, but it explained them. As the battle subsided, authorities stormed the capital, arresting survivors of the Silver Masks and confiscating evidence of Elara's crimes. Jasmine watched silently as Elara was led away in handcuffs, her head bowed in shame. The fight was over, but the scars would remain. Standing amidst the ruins of the Senate chamber, Jasmine allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. Behind her, activists cheered, chanting her name alongside Senator Cole's. Outside, the city buzzed with renewed hope, fueled by the truth she had fought so hard to expose. Yet Jasmine felt no triumph, only resolve. The road ahead would be long, fraught with challenges and setbacks. But for the first time in her life, she knew exactly who she was and what she stood for, because justice wasn't given. It was claimed, and Jasmine Washington intended to claim it, not just for herself, but for everyone who deserved better than the world they'd been handed. With that thought, she turned and walked away, her steps steady despite the weight of all she'd endured. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the talking oak tree waited, its roots stretching deep into the earth like veins pumping life into the soil. She would return someday. Until then, she carried its spirit within her, a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could take root and grow. The United Nations General Assembly Hall in New York City was a cathedral of diplomacy, its cavernous space filled with rows of seats ascending like waves toward the heavens. Flags from every nation hung proudly along the walls, their colors vibrant against the muted tones of marble and wood. But today, all eyes were fixed on the podium at the center of the stage, a simple wooden lectern adorned with nothing more than the UN emblem. Jasmine Washington stood behind it, her presence commanding despite the scars etched into her body and soul. She wore a black suit tailored to perfection, its stark simplicity underscoring the gravity of her message. In her hand, she held the vial retrieved from the talking oak tree, now encased in a glass cylinder that caught the light as if alive with energy. It wasn't just a relic. It was proof of survival, resilience, and defiance. As she surveyed the crowd, she saw faces representing every corner of the globe. Diplomats, activists, journalists, survivors of oppression, and families seeking justice. Among them were allies who had fought alongside her. Marcus Hale, Rosa, and countless others whose names would never grace headlines but whose courage had changed the course of history. And though Ethan wasn't there to witness this moment, his spirit lingered in the quiet strength that steadied her voice. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jasmine began, her tone measured yet impassioned. "We gather here today not to celebrate victory, but to confront truth. For too long, humanity has allowed fear to dictate our choices, to justify atrocities committed in the name of progress. We have been told that science will save us, that technology will heal our wounds. But what happens when those tools are wielded not to uplift, but to control, to erase?" She paused, letting her words settle over the audience. Murmurs rippled through the hall, anticipation crackling in the air. "Project Genesis sought to create superhumans," she continued, holding up the vial for all to see. "Individuals engineered to bear witness without bias, to remember without forgetting, to act without hesitation. They called it evolution. I call it erasure." Her gaze swept across the room, locking onto key figures in attendance. Government officials implicated in the scandal, corporate executives tied to the program's funding, and ordinary citizens watching via live stream around the world. Each face bore traces of guilt, shame, or hope, depending on which side of history they stood. "This vial contains fragments of my DNA," Jasmine explained, her voice steady. "But it also holds fragments of countless others. People who trusted doctors, scientists, leaders to protect them. Instead, they were betrayed, experimented on, forgotten, their voices silenced so that a select few could decide what it means to be human." She lowered the vial gently onto the lectern, her hands trembling slightly. "I am not a product. I am not a weapon. I am a person, and so are you. Humanity is messy, imperfect, flawed. But it is ours to shape, not to engineer." The room erupted into applause, spontaneous and thunderous, as people rose to their feet. Jasmine blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the collective response. This wasn't about her. It was about everyone who had ever felt powerless, invisible, or unworthy. Her fight had become theirs, a shared declaration that justice belonged to no one individual but to all of humanity. When the applause subsided, she spoke again, her voice softer but no less resolute. "We don't need superhumans. We need humans who listen, who empathize, who refuse to accept silence as an answer. Today, we stand united not because we believe perfection is possible, but because we know imperfection is beautiful." She gestured to the screen behind her, where images of protests worldwide appeared alongside portraits of victims of Project Genesis. Names scrolled beneath each photo, ensuring that none would be forgotten. "These are the witnesses," she said firmly. "Not me alone, but all of us. Together, we carry the torch of accountability. Together, we demand change." After the speech, Jasmine stepped outside into the crisp autumn air, the weight of expectation lifting slightly as she breathed in freedom. Reporters swarmed her, shouting questions about next steps, policy reforms, and personal reflections. She answered briefly, deflecting attention away from herself and toward the movement she represented. "This isn't my story," she told them. "It belongs to everyone willing to fight for justice." Later that evening, she returned to the talking oak tree, the place where it had all begun. The massive roots stretched wide, embracing the earth like arms reaching out to comfort. Kneeling beside the familiar patch of soil, she planted a new seed, a symbol of renewal and hope. As she covered it with dirt, she whispered softly, almost to herself, "We are stronger than any code." In the weeks that followed, global momentum surged. Governments enacted sweeping reforms to regulate genetic research and ensure ethical oversight. Corporations involved in Project Genesis faced lawsuits and public scrutiny, forcing transparency and accountability. Activists continued organizing under the banner of "We are all witnesses," expanding their mission to address systemic inequalities beyond genetics. Jasmine became a reluctant icon, traveling the world to speak at conferences, universities, and grassroots events. Yet she remained grounded, refusing to let fame overshadow purpose. Wherever she went, she carried Audre Lorde's poetry and blues music in her heart, reminders of the power of art to inspire resistance and healing. One day, while visiting Montgomery, she stopped by Leah Cole's grave, the wife Ethan had loved and lost. Standing before the headstone, she placed a single flower and whispered a promise. "I'll keep fighting for both of you." Months later, Jasmine stood once more beneath the talking oak tree, watching leaves drift lazily to the ground. Around her, children played, their laughter echoing through the clearing. Nearby, activists gathered, sharing stories and strategies for the battles ahead. The tree stood tall and unyielding, its branches stretching skyward like a testament to endurance. As she walked away, humming a blues tune her mother used to sing, Jasmine felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. The scars of her journey remained, but they no longer defined her. She was Jasmine Washington, a fighter, a survivor, a witness. And though the road ahead would always be uncertain, she knew one thing for sure: justice was worth fighting for, always.